this is, I guess, a bit of an experiment for us to sort of help get more out of some of the guides and things that we've been making for all of the wonderful refill schemes out there. I think the thing with PDFs is that they can be kind of easy to sort of look at and then store away and forget. So we just wanted to kind of do this cool where we're going to sort of walk through some of the sort of main points of the guide, but also have an opportunity for anyone to kind of ask questions about it in just kind of a real-time sort of way. And we'll also welcome you guys to share any experience that you've sort of had, and there's a chat room to do that. So yeah, we're going to sort of do our best to kind of get through most of it, and there is quite a lot in there, so we don't want to kind of bore you too much and go into too much detail. But the call is going to be recorded, so it will be available afterwards. So it may be that you're actually watching this in a month's time or even a year's time. But knowing the nature of social media, we'll probably need an update in that time. So yeah, I guess before we stuck in, last month we also sent out the first kind of refill droplet, which is a monthly newsletter specifically for schemes and for you guys. And this is kind of, I guess, a way just to send out useful resources, info about calls and events like this one, and also just, I guess, highlighting stuff that's going on in the community on the ground, and especially now that we're getting, quite a lot of new schemes on board. Thanks to all the wonderful regional coordinators, some of whom are on the call today. So I just wanted to say before we start the call as well, if you didn't get the email, the refill droplet email, it was sent at the end of March, do just let your regional coordinator know, or give us just a message on Facebook or Instagram or whatever channel you're on, and we can make sure that you get the next one, and we can also send you the one that we sent last time. If you're on this call though, you probably got that email. So if you didn't, also just check your spam, because it may have just popped in there, and it's worth adding refill to your contact list so we can send future ones if you like. Okay, so I guess before we start, I think what I'm going to get you guys to do, like James and Sarah, if you just want to do a quick intro. I think, and Hannah, now that you've joined. So just I'm aware that some people might not have dealt with you if you're not kind of working with their region. So just to make it easy, James, did you want to start?
Yeah, I will. Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. I was just typing in the chat, actually, just saying if anybody's watching, for those people who are watching, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. And if you're having technical problems, because somebody's asked that said that they can't hear, I had exactly the same problem. So you might need to update your plugin. And potentially even restart your computer as well, because I had the same problem a few minutes before we were due to go live. But yeah, quick introduction about me. I'm the regional, I'm one of the regional coordinators, and I cover quite a few water company areas like South West Water, Severn Trent, Wessex Water, the area Thames Waters area outside of London. And plus a few other little small water companies like Bournemouth and South Staffordshire Water, and I've been with Refill for about a year now, helping lots of different schemes across all of those areas get sort of refill spread and helping people to reduce their single-use plastics.
Great, thank you. And Sarah, did you want to go?
Spread and helping people to
Hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm the regional coordinator for.
And Sarah, did you want to go?
Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm the regional coordinator for. Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Wait, I'm going to come back in just a second.
There's some serious feedback going on.
I don't know what's going on.
If you've just joined us, you can probably tell this is our first time doing this call, but this is all part of the fun of it. The idea was to kind of have a bit of an experiment and try it out. Hannah, did you want to? I've just seen you coming back on. So if you wanted to just do a quick intro about who you are.
Yes, yeah, I'm Hannah. I'm the Refill Wales coordinator, and I'm bringing Refill to Wales through the help of the Welsh Government and the water boards, Dŵr Cymru and Hafren Dyfrdwy are promoting and supporting where they can. Kind of working to refill the Wales coastal path as a priority, and then trying to kind of get refill schemes set up across the whole of Wales and all the communities.
Great. Thank you for that intro, and perfect timing. Looks like Sarah has just come back on. So, Sarah, if you wanted to take two, give your intro. Great. Thank you for that intro, and perfect timing. Looks like Sarah has just come back on. So, Sarah, if you wanted to take two, give your intro.
I think I'm still getting feedback, to be honest.
It could be worth trying to maybe also use headphones or muting.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, or mute the YouTube channel. But yeah, welcome. If you're just joining us, basically the plan for today is just to go through the social media guide, kind of page by page. So if you do have a link to it from the email that we sent out, feel free to open that up and follow along. I'm going to be sharing my screen as well, so my face will be replaced by the social media guide, which will probably be a lot more useful for this call. So that will be kind of when we kick off. But we'll try and do Sarah intros again. I'm not sure if that's it. Are you ready or? Yeah, and feel free just to use the chat room. It should just be to the sort of the right of the video. So you're more than welcome to sort of come in and just ask questions at any time. Like, what are you doing? Why is there all this audio feedback? How's that, Sarah? Did you want to try again, or? No. Okay, no problem. All right, so let's dive in. We're going to just start from the beginning. So I'm going to quickly share my screen, and as mentioned, just please do feel free to jump in at any point. The regional coordinators on the call will be in the chat room as well, and I'll try and jump in there when they sort of start to input it as well. Okay. Great. All right. So this is the social media guide. Hopefully, most of you are somewhat familiar with it so far. So this stuff is all not so important, but we'll get right into the crux of it. So yeah, I guess social media has been a big part of Refill, and also City to Sea. You know, a lot of the campaigning done is used through these channels. So it's been quite a big part of the growth of Refill in particular, and especially like since schemes like you guys have been coming on board, it's been a really crucial part of it. So we really like to encourage people to kind of make the most of social media. So that is really what this guide is about. So we're just trying to kind of highlight some of the key things that we've found useful over the years and try and pass some of that on. And we're also really aware that actually some of you in the Refill schemes and various people sort of really on the ground with Refill are really kind of plugged in with social media and actually really like doing some great stuff that even gives us some sort of ideas in terms of what we can start also putting on our channel. So do feel free to share your experience. It is really sort of useful. for everyone. So, all right, so we're on page 3 now. And I guess kicking things off, we wanted to look at, choosing what platforms you're going to use. So at Refill, we use Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and these are kind of the big sort of 3, I guess, and the most, in terms of user base, how many people are on these channels, the most kind of popular. Obviously, there's also sort of more slightly what they call darker social things like WhatsApp and things that are being used, although that's kind of another sort of can of worms, if you like. You will also see we're probably, like what we're doing now, we've started to use a bit more of YouTube and creating some sort of longer form videos. But you can imagine this is kind of quite a big sort of undertaking to be making long form videos, as it can be a bit more involved with resources. So I guess the main thing around choosing your platform is really thinking about as well your audience, and also what you're comfortable with. So a lot of people will be more comfortable with kind of short journalistic style of Twitter, whereas it might be that you're a really sort of visual person and perhaps even like a keen photographer, which makes Instagram a great channel. There's absolutely no pressure to use every channel and do everything and try and keep up with like a scheme that might be more resourced or with more volunteers, or being on every channel just because the name sort of Refill HQ is on certain channels. We really encourage you just to be sort of realistic with your time and also what you enjoy. Like, we don't want you to be just doing stuff because we're saying, you should be on this channel. So really think about what you most would naturally kind of be drawn to, and also that totally might be that you are like really keen on getting all the channels set up, which is also great. So in terms of the sort of next page around choosing your channel, we just kind of here have gone a little bit more into detail in terms of what we've found our audiences are like on these different channels. So, for Facebook, we tend to have an audience sort of 35 plus as the predominant audience, and this is pretty reflective, really, of these channels' whole and in their entire kind of user base. So Instagram typically sort of slightly younger audience, 18 to 35. You also see that the key here is with Instagram is that it is driven by beautiful images and more video. But later on in the guide, we go a little bit more into kind of specific content based on platforms and what works on certain platforms. So that is just kind of a little bit around choosing your platform. There's absolutely no pressure to have all of them. Pick ones that you think you'll sort of do best on, but also just be aware of, I guess, your community and your town. What's kind of common. Like, what are your friends using? What are the businesses in your community using? Where does the most activity take place? So I think just asking some of those prompts is a great kind of place to start. And obviously, we're here. We're totally happy for you to reach out and ask if you want to ask us something or bounce ideas off about new channels that are, because obviously there's a whole lot of other channels that aren't on here. But so that is kind of a bit on choosing your channels. So if we just move on here. So naming the accounts is, this is a very kind of standard and simple thing. What we found before we kind of put this together is that a lot of schemes will have like an underscore in their display name, or a kind of they won't include a gap. So your display name is it doesn't have to be a unique thing like your username. If Refill London, for example, has already been taken by someone else, you have to kind of include things like an underscore. to sort of differentiate that. So when you tag someone in the post, it's not, getting confused by who it's pointing certain people to. Your display name is kind of what comes up in your tweets. You can kind of see here, Refill London, the display name is showing up on this particular tweet, and then the username is followed by that. So this is just basically following quite, a simple template, which is including, see, Refill and your city or your town name. So it's the name of your scheme. The display name includes the space, and the username can just be all one word, like you see here with Refill London. So that's pretty much sort of says what what's on the tin. I guess, what is really helpful before you kind of, when you're setting up your profile, or even retrospectively, like, in all honesty, Refill social accounts have been going for some time now, but in the last kind of 6 months, we've been putting effort into really kind of optimizing our accounts. So, what images we use, the sort of profile picture and consistency across channels, as well as the bio and that kind of thing, and what's being said in that bio, because often you'll have limited character count for that. So what we've done here is just kind of included a little bit about each of those steps and kind of what you can do. So let's just jump here. So in that last email that we sent out, we included a link to a kind of and sort of new digital pack that's we're constantly going to be adding stuff to over the next month and in the lead up to National Refill Day. So that includes a kind of standardized refill droplet logo. So our thinking behind this is basically that we kind of unite by having all having that same sort of refill blue droplet, and the Refill HQ one has the white one, just so there's a little bit of differentiation between the scheme accounts and the main accounts. But what we were thinking is a kind of great way to sort of localize a bit is by really taking advantage of that huge space you have across most of the platforms, like, well, at least with Facebook and Twitter, and uploading a cover photo that kind of speaks more to your sort of local community, whether that's, a photo of your team, like I think we had on the Refill Brentwood one here, or like an image of a local refill station, or perhaps like an iconic kind of image of your town. So that's really kind of, I guess, the way that we're encouraging people to use their kind of profile pictures and cover photos. And you can also see here with the bio, we've got a kind of template that we use across our channels, which is really just trying to be, pretty direct and to the point, using almost a kind of bullet point type thing, saying, what we do and what we're about, a kind of mission, and having a simple call to action, as well as sharing those kind of branded hashtags. And for Refill HQ, it's really important for us to kind of link in with City to See, as that's kind of our, sort of parenting sort of company, and the company that runs the Refill campaign. So you'll also see below that this kind of these main points here, that it's great for schemes to include a sort of specific hashtag for your town. So if that's, Refill Lewis, or Refill Cardiff, or Refill Manchester, and we talk a little bit about hashtags later, but we've got our kind of share your refills with Refill Revolution. You can also find a way to kind of fit in your hashtag for your town, and just, I guess, it kind of creates that space where you can see, who's talking about you by kind of going to the hashtag and seeing what kind of activities happening. I'm very aware as well that there's a lot of me talking at the moment. So what I want to do is just sort of intentionally open up the space I know there's been a little bit of action in the chat room, but Hannah, James, Sarah, if you guys have any input at this stage, or want to give people listening a break from my voice, please cut in if you want. But yeah, I'll just give you a little bit of space to do that if you'd like.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I would just say to try and make your Facebook and Twitter accounts easy for you to use, so it doesn't become a burden. We know that our local champions are volunteers, so you're already taking up your spare time in doing this. We don't want social media to become an extra problem, or I don't know, not problem maybe, but we want to encourage this. It's meant to be a fun extra thing that you can do to kind of grow your scheme. So just making it work for yourself, I'd say, is really important.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a really good and important point, and it's probably good to almost sort of make that throughout this guide. I think also just echoing back to the kind of channels and talking about picking channels, and I think like Hannah, what the sentiment there is, it can get really overwhelming very quickly. And I think even as at Refill HQ, it's easy to sort of feel that with a reasonably small sort of team that's not full time. But yeah, and even more so when you're volunteering your time and you're actually a lot of what you're doing is probably really focused like on being on the ground, being there with people, doing events, having that kind of face-to-face connection. And I think it might have even been mentioned at the beginning of the social guide, but that's the social media activity is definitely no sort of replacement for getting out there and engaging and just taking action in your community. So yeah, thanks for that reminder, Hannah, because I think it is important to. I think it's probably important to bring that up. So thanks for bringing that in. And yeah, I think maybe just adding to that, actually, I think as we go through here, if things do feel like, oh man, that sounds like a lot. Just remember, take this as a grain of sort of sand, and pick out those bits that you think will be really useful and that will apply. I think you can get stuck down in the detail as well. So totally hear that. And on that note, I think we're just going to go into this sort of managing social, which is, if you're finding that time to be able to put a bit of work into just developing some of the basic stuff on social, there are some techniques and tools that can help make sure that you're not spending every time or all the time you have dedicated to Refill trying to sort of figure out how to make the most of social media channels. So yeah, I've just got a big highlight here in my notes saying, this is quite a big one, managing social channels. So it's totally up to you how much time you're putting into it. And I think, some people are going to, like I mentioned before, some people will have more time than others, or they'll find it just easier and more sort of a more natural thing to be in this sort of digital space and putting these messages out there and writing tweets and creating images to post. So yeah, definitely don't beat yourself up. And I think doing it in manageable chunks is great. One thing that we do and we find really helpful, and I think also I've heard this from some of the other schemes, is just blocking out a time during the week, or even once a month or once every few weeks, where you can just sort of sit down, look at engagement. Have people been tweeting you, or are people messaging you, or kind of engaging with your accounts, and as well as sort of doing that, I guess just having a set aside time where you can just schedule 2 or 3 posts in a week, spread out over a week. And there are lots of useful tools that are free, like Buffer, that allow you to, just sit down for half an hour, write 3 tweets and kind of schedule that, or Instagram post or Facebook post. So yeah, at the end of this guide, there is also just a list of resources, like the ones I mentioned, Buffer, as well as just some of the actual native resources to the channels, like various help centers that can be really useful for information. Yeah, another point I've got here, I guess, is just being remember to be realistic and find what works for you. We have this thing, I guess, about not kind of going against the grain too much. Like, what is it? Where do your strengths lie? What's going to be the easiest kind of way for you to share with the activity through these channels? Don't, if it's really going to be difficult to get sort of photography and for Instagram, but it's going to be much easier to be doing sort of short tweets and sharing blog posts and things like that. I guess just acknowledge that and try and sort of work to your what you find sort of comes most naturally. The other big thing is just let us know, and or your regional coordinator know if you've got something sort of big coming up. I think I'm very aware that sometimes there can be stuff that gets missed. So we're totally open for people to just directly message us through these accounts and say, hey, we've got this event coming up or this action day. Could you can you schedule a couple of tweets just letting the wider refill audience know? And we're totally happy to do that. And also retrospectively, if you've had an event and you've got some photos or you've got a video to share, just send us a link and we can definitely get that up. So yeah, and on this guide, just coming back to this, you'll see there's a couple of kind of just tips in terms of what you can do, whether it's just putting aside 10 to 15 minutes a day where you can sort of open your phone and just have a scroll through any of your social media accounts to see what's going on. Yeah, that's kind of a kind of useful thing. I think also, a lot of people that come on board to start refill schemes are already kind of quite influential people in their community and quite active. Like the guys down in Dorset who actually went and met not too long ago, a part of Litter Free Coast and Sea. They kind of are the organisation that is running the scheme down there. So they're already quite active as a scheme, and I think you can get the same thing with individuals who are quite sort of vocal about some of these issues already. And it might be actually that you're able to sort of use your own social account. So we don't want to put a kind of burden on you for doubling up, and so we're happy to kind of retweet individuals like that as well. And there's a couple of other things here that were sort of mentioned around monitoring your local hashtag. So with hashtags on most of these social channels, you can click on that hashtag and it will take you to essentially like a way of discovering other posts that have been put out there using that same hashtag. So you can kind of see what's going on and kind of engage that way, or retweet posts, or sort of rebuff them through whatever the platform is. I don't know if I mean managing social is quite a big one, so I don't know if any of you guys, Hannah, James, or Sarah, if you want to talk to that point. I guess it is kind of, we've got a few more slides on it, but if there's anything around there that you've kind of heard from your schemes or what you've found from your experience, because I know some of you also run some of the refill scheme channels.
Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yeah.
Hey, I would recommend having a look at Buffer as one of the biggest things to do, because it frees up a lot of your time to do the community stuff. It's a brilliant way of scheduling your posts and sending them out to both Twitter and Facebook. So it saves that time of doing that. And then when you're going on, you are just having a nice chat with the people who are talking to you and socializing with you. It's something I personally use on my personal stuff as well, and I know Harry does as well.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really a lifesaver, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's free as well. So
yeah, which is a bonus.
Yeah. There are paid versions, so and obviously we wouldn't expect anyone to do that. But yeah, you can. I think in terms of even though the free account does have some limitations, I think from a schemes perspective, there'd be more than enough sort of features, or those limits wouldn't or shouldn't be a problem. And worst case scenario, you can always just do a few extra posts through the actual, directly through the platform if you've reached the quota or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I found that the free one has worked very well for most of my schemes, and they don't really have to go on very often because they don't tend to have a ridiculous amount of stuff to post. It's normally a couple of photos from an event, and eking them out means that you have more material to send out there.
Yeah, no, that's totally, I can echo that. I don't know if anyone who's in the call now has used Buffer or heard of Buffer before, but feel free to just drop a comment in the chat room. If it's something you've used and found useful, or if it's something that sounds like totally like it would be bliss and it was the thing you've been looking for. That feedback's always really helpful.
Harry, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Hi, mate. Actually, I have a question, something that I don't think is addressed in this section. But would you have any advice for schemes about when if they're
Oh, James, you've been muted.
Oh, absolutely muted.
There you go.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying, would you have any advice for schemes on when the best time of day would be to schedule posts and content to have sort of the best impact, or would you say it's kind of just get it out there?
Yeah, totally. I think it's a bit of a. I could probably say something, and someone could also probably be like, "No, that's not right." I think it's with certain platforms, it's kind of, I guess, different. Like we've noticed with our Instagram that early evening, anywhere from sort of 6 to 7:30, 8 p.m. is really a really great time to post, and also the weekends. And I guess that kind of speaks a bit to what how the users on Instagram kind of engage with that channel. It is kind of more of a sort of lifestyle-y, like a little bit detached from work. I know friends that just really don't follow anything to do with their day job or something through Instagram. Whereas Twitter is probably a bit more start of day kind of. Even late morning, we've found that kind of I think 10 to 12 in the morning. You do have that kind of journalistic approach, I guess, on Twitter, and in terms of news coming out, it's often at the beginning of the day. And for me personally, Twitter less so on the weekends. And yeah, I guess it's also similar to Facebook. A lot of channels, like people do kind of have that habit of checking them first thing in the morning, and definitely for Facebook, Twitter, anywhere from kind of 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. But I also personally have a thing of sort of not always taking advantage of those times, just because I try not to check my phone in the morning, and I'm not sure if it's always a good habit to get into when people get up straight away. And but I think just having awareness of that, and not sort of taking advantage too much, but just it is good to sometimes I think share that in the morning. But so I mean, I guess there are some kind of general rules of thumb. I'm not sure if anyone else has found differently, but I definitely say Instagram seems to do well in the evening, sometimes lunchtimes, later in the week. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else around that. James, I'm not sure if that's sort of helpful. Or the other thing that I will say actually is if you do use Buffer, they kind of calculate and guess times, and they put slots in the scheduler. So you basically have a view of a calendar, and they'll, after you've done some posting and things, I think it's based on engagement and how people engage with those posts. They kind of pick optimal times. So that's actually really handy. And I often will, when I'm scheduling stuff for refill, I'll just sort of take note of Buffer's time slots that they put up there. The other thing is just using the analytics from the accounts that you're using. So if you're on Twitter, or if you're on Instagram, Facebook, they all have analytics that you can look at and see what posts have performed really well, and see if a similar post has performed not as well, but and see if there's a difference in time, because it may be that it isn't the content. It could just be that that type of content works really well at that time. So take advantage of the analytics. We don't really go too much into that in this social media guide, but generally it's kind of in the account section, or if you click on your profile picture, you get a drop down and there'll be an analytics tab in there that are really useful to use. If that feels like it's just getting a bit too much, totally no pressure, obviously. But if you do want to kind of know more about that, totally feel free to reach out, or drop a question in the chat room now. Did anyone else have anything to add in terms of times?
I would say to begin with, just play with it. Really.
Yeah, that's probably a simpler way to begin.
It's the best way to do it. Every time I've started a new account, I've just played with it to see what works. Often what works for one account suddenly is blown out the water with another one. So I just play around with it for a couple of months, and then I kind of start to figure out when people engage, and then start sort of like tapping into those instead. But otherwise, just stick it out there. And if you're following other social accounts for the other refill schemes and Refill HQ, they're all very, very good at liking, commenting, and sharing as well. It's a very good tip to get some good engagement and get it spreading around a little bit. We all celebrate each other's successes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a little bit on that as well, in terms of, most mornings we'll kind of we'll check in from Refill HQ and just sort of see what's going on and comment or retweet posts from schemes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. But no, I think that's a really good point, Sarah, and probably another thing just to kind of remember throughout this stuff, throughout this guide, is that there are kind of certain best practices, and there are kind of things that if you search online, there'll be blogs and articles and all kinds of things about it. But yeah, I think there definitely can be sometimes that thing of just sort of doing it, having a go, seeing sort of what impact it has and how it goes. I think the great thing about social media as well is that it's not like a life sentence. A post goes out and then it disappears, and people will see it once, and the occasional one, of course, will kind of spread for whatever reason. That's kind of great. But I think there's definitely no harm in just trying stuff out and kind of experimenting. See how a post drops. Maybe you've got an idea for a blog or something, and you just want to put a post out there that kind of touches on that subject and see how it performs. And yeah, it's a good way to test out stuff like that. Cool. All right, I think we can move on from that point. I'm aware of time, so I don't want to spend too long on each thing, but if we do go past something sort of too quickly, do just say, wait, I have a question about that, or you want to sort of talk more about it. Hopefully there'll also be a little bit of time at the end where we can just kind of open up any questions. So if you want just to sort of make notes of things that you feel like asking, but happy to listen, then you can bring them up at the end as well. Cool. So yeah, I think this is now just what sort of Sarah was touching on. This is just saying, we really want to share what's going on in the refill community. We do sometimes miss things. So like, please, if there's something really important, like you've got an event or you've had a really maybe you've reached a milestone, like, you know, you've signed up 100 refill stations, or you've reached some kind of point like that. We really love celebrating that. And you know, I think, you know, we've got sort of 160 plus schemes, so it can be easy, especially when most of us are kind of part-time, to miss things like that. But we do really want to know about it. So let us know if you've got something coming up, or you've had a kind of milestone, because we will definitely put something in on our main channels. Cool. All right, so this content section, I think we can kind of go through reasonably quickly. What it's kind of looking at is a little bit of stuff around tone of voice, which is very, I think, specific. It's not so much about this, these are the rules. It's just more about how the kind of Refill HQ brand, you know, has been set up, and the kind of voice that we use. And I think, you know, if you do have time to put sort of channels together, or put social media stuff together, I think these are just kind of helpful things for us to share with you in terms of what kind of voice we have. And I think, you know, a lot of the tweets and posts that I've seen are already really, like, I feel very much on brand. And, you know, I think that happens when you've kind of got a common purpose, and people that are all kind of getting on board. There's that kind of shared understanding. Just in case you don't know, the kind of some of the core values of Refill is positive, playful, and inclusive. So I guess just touching on each of those quickly. So positive, you know, Refill is a solutions-focused campaign. You know, it's a really dire area, I think, plastics. Like, you know, there's a lot of really shocking stuff out there on plastics, which is a big part of, I think, this whole sort of messaging and the whole sort of shift that's happening now to move away from these kind of harmful materials. And we do highlight that, and you will see that. But I think in general, there's a real kind of, I think it's kind of something that makes Refill a bit unique as well. There's this tendency to really focus on, hey, you know, this is terrible. We've created this mess, but here we can actually do something about it. So it's a little bit more kind of empowering, and a bit more of a positive kind of solutions focused plan. So that's kind of a little bit about positive. And kind of leading on from that, I guess the kind of playful aspect is really, you know, about just having fun. I mean, you know, Refill, it was started as a very much a grassroots thing, and it was really just a kind of fun way to engage people in the issue of plastics. You know, I think with the, in no way discrediting some of the really amazing work that's been achieved by the whole community, including you guys who are listening now. But, you know, I think serious impact can also be complemented with, like, you know, that kind of sense of playfulness and just really enjoying the kind of, I guess, the process. I guess, yeah, there's this stuff is maybe a little bit kind of up in the air as well, but in terms of really grounding it down, we have a couple of examples. It's just further on where we link to kind of, you know, here is a tweet that we sort of think is positive, or here's an Instagram post that kind of draws on this kind of playful aspect. And then inclusive, I think this is a big one, and I think actually this can be quite a difficult one for people, especially when it comes to using, you know, technology. Not everyone has a smartphone. Not everyone uses social media, and you know, we look at how we can be inclusive across the board. I guess specifically, you know, when we're thinking about it in the context of social media, you know, what is kind of highlighted here is keeping our language simple, not kind of, you know, being aware of like what colors we're using in post and making them accessible. So yeah, if someone was to be colorblind, or just, you know, having clear contrast with text on images and things like that. But also just having that kind of awareness of like, you know, what am I saying here? Who is this sort of directed at? And could I kind of be potentially excluding someone, you know, and not just in a single post, but I think for inclusiveness, it's that kind of gradually over time. How is the messaging and how is this kind of culture we're building in this sort of digital space? How is it kind of being more inviting to some people and not to other people? And I think that's a really difficult thing, you know, when it comes to any of these sort of marketing platforms, because the kind of go-to thing in marketing is that you pick your target audience. And, you know, I think the really great thing about a scheme like this, where it's very much community focused, is that, you know, your community is your kind of audience, I guess, and the other people that are around you, you know, and geographically. And then obviously, you know, Refill as a whole, bringing in, you know, people from all across the UK and the globe, actually brings in a real kind of diverse group of people, which is quite cool. And we're seeing sort of more and more of that, which is great. Feel free to cut me off at any time, guys, but otherwise I'll keep on pushing on. So we're just on page 15 now, if you're following along, and I'm just also aware of the time, so kind of just going to speed up a little bit. This is really just some ideas to get you started in terms of what are the type of posts that we share, and what kind of posts can you share as well. So we have announcements, you know, news updates, anything about, you might have events coming up, things that are kind of, you know, potentially newsworthy. Don't always have to be newsworthy. It could just be a nice kind of a nice bit of information, or just kind of a hat tip to a local business that's kind of taken some sort of action. We've also got kind of news about plastic pollution. So, you know, if you're using, if you're doing a quick search on Google, you can use their tools section to kind of sort of filter out what your results are showing. So you might say, you know, I want to see news that is mentioning refill schemes and in the last week. So that will kind of give you results for anything that uses that keyword of refill schemes, and, you know, it'll be recent because you would have sort of selected the last few weeks. I can actually sort of quickly just show you here. And we often will be posting a lot of, you know, a lot of news and stuff as well. So you don't necessarily have to do this yourself unless you're kind of interested in maybe looking at local news. But you can use this tool section here and select the time past, you know, from the last hour to the past year, and, you know, obviously putting your keywords up in the search bar. And facts and findings. I've actually just sort of finished off doing some sort of facts and stats posts, image posts, which we'll be uploading to the digital starter pack. I think, you know, during National Refill Day last year, we saw, like, I think these just were really popular, especially with schemes. So we're kind of keen to do a few more of those. But I've just, we've kind of got some, they're kind of in this type of format. So with this design, although this is not a stat or a fact, it is a quote from Hamlet that we've tampered with. Here's a better example. So we're kind of doing a series of these from our facts and stats document that I think you should have access to. I should double check that, but yeah, that document basically has all of these just in plain text, and we have included the source for all of the facts as well, so you can kind of just, you know, it's really important that we know where those facts and stats are coming from. And yeah, here is just some more stuff in terms of the type of topics you can posted about, whether it's quotes from local councillors or people in your community, and yeah, opportunities. So that's really just about call to actions. If you've got an event coming up, or you know, a kind of action day, you know, that's another great kind of thing just to put out there. Or even call to actions could be, you know, hey, we've got this new refill station that I've just been added. You know, take your bottle down there, have a coffee, go and refill, that kind of thing. All right, so we're just at page 17 here, and this is just page 17 to 19 is basically some examples of posts. So this has some, you know, copy that you can actually just, you can cut and paste and kind of slightly sort of rehash for your own channels. So that's, you know, you're totally welcome to go on there and pull that from there. I guess I'd also say, you know, please feel free to go into any of the Refill HQ channels and take content you like from there and use that as a resource as well, because you can copy and paste that, you can save the images or screenshot the images and schedule that into your into Buffer, or just, you know, if you're not using a tool like that, you know, just to put it out directly on your channel. We're totally happy if you do that without kind of you know, using the retweet symbols or just retweeting it. Like, we're happy for you to kind of recreate that and put your own kind of local spin on it. And here you just see links to actual tweets that have been done. So we've got sort of fun posts here where we've used GIFs. So I'll just open that. So, you know, this is just another way to kind of include a bit of fun into posts. And of course, emojis, which I'm sure you all know we love to use. A useful thing for that as well is, you know, more and more of the social accounts are actually including emojis, like when you're in a composition window. And, you know, if you're using your phone, you can obviously just, if it's a smartphone, you can just pull up the emoji kind of keyboard on there. But often what I do when I'm drafting posts is I just visit getemoji.com. So that is where you can go and just literally copy, highlight the emoji you want, and then just, you know, command copy, and then you'll be able to paste it in like that. So that is a useful resource. I think we also link to that at the end. So do make, you know, make the most of that that page. There are these references, and they link to certain, you know, if you're looking for something that's kind of got a bit of a fun sort of angle or a positive post, you know, go in here and we link to those directly, just in the highlighted blue. And same here, we've got some more, like we were saying, you know, the announcements, facts and findings. We've included tweets for those as well. So I'll just open one of them so you can see them. So yeah, there's Whitstable kind of celebrating their launch with the mayor. Okay, Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, just on the note of things to post, in their launch packs, all refill schemes have access to some of the really great resources that we have that are ready made. So we've got some excellent things to start with, such as stats and things like that. If you look at some of the other accounts, you can see where they've used the nice yellow ones we did for National Refill Day last year.
Yeah, cool.
So that's a really handy.
Oh, are you there? You've just been muted.
Okay.
You're saying that's a really handy.
Yeah, so there's some handy stuff in the digital folder in the resources in the launch pack.
Yeah, cool.
I just wanted to add that not to feel pressured to have to kind of make it community based the entire time. So if you are having, you know, if you haven't had an event for a while, if you haven't had anything really going on in your community that you can post about, having these fun facts and findings and things that have already been made up for you, just post that. So just that you've got some content on your page, you know, every day. But yeah, just that you don't have to feel like you have to go out and take a photograph of something in your community. Everything's there for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, I think. And I think also, like, I'm not sure if you guys have found that this is a thing, but you know, if you've got a bit of a quiet patch, or you're just busy with your, you know, just life stuff, or, you know, like other work that you're doing, and you've seen, you know, maybe a neighboring scheme has got a bit of activity. Like, also, I think it's really great to kind of support that, and sort of, you know, even just by retweeting and saying, hey, you know, it's great to see our neighbors doing this and that. You know, if, yeah, like Hannah said, you know, if you've not got something on at the moment, but you still want to kind of activate some of your channels, then that's also another kind of way I think you can engage. Cool. All right, so we're just going to move on to the sort of hashtag section. We've kind of put just a definition here because I think a lot of not everyone's going to know what a hashtag is, and that's totally fair enough. But we've kind of touched on it already. And just as it says here, you know, hashtags are a word or a phrase preceded by a hash sign used on social media websites and applications, especially Twitter, to identify messages on a specific topic. So when you include a hashtag in a post, it's basically archiving that particular post into a kind of repository of messages that also, you know, use that on that same hashtag. So whenever we, you know, use the tag Refill Revolution, that's going to be included in its very own sort of section, like a search engine. So if we type that into one of these channels, it's going to come up displaying that. So I feel like it's kind of easier to sort of to show that in action. So like for this post here, here's Refill Revolution. So if I just click on that, and this is the same across any channel, it's going to go to this whole section of posts that have been used, that have used Refill Revolution. So you can kind of see that we've got that one there, and there's a couple here from city to sea. And you know, it is a little bit more generic. So there's some like there's some other posts as well. But yeah, this is a great way. Like if you've got your kind of scheme specific one. So if you've got, you know, Refill Dorset or Refill Manchester, you can type that into the search bar. You know, make sure you include the hashtag sign before that, and just see what's coming up. You know, because I think it's a good way to discover posts that you might have missed otherwise. So just as I mentioned, and I think everyone that I've seen on social media is pretty good with this anyway, is you know, we kind of encourage you to use a city or town specific hashtag as a way to kind of track activity for what's happening in your scheme or in your community, because it's really handy for us as well. Like if we want to kind of go and check out you know, Refill Wales and see what's happening, we can just kind of, you know, we could go to obviously the channel, the specific channel, but we can also use the hashtag, so we're not just seeing what you know, Refill Wales is posting as a channel, but we're seeing other people that are also posting about it. And you'll also see here we've got a little breakdown of the hashtags that we use, and just a brief description of what they're kind of for. In the last email, we had this kind of sort of just small mention about Ready to Refill, which is a hashtag that we haven't sort of officially launched it, but it's something we're probably launching early next month. And this is really just going to be a sort of hashtag specific for people that are refilling at fountains. If you kind of follow Chili's on Instagram, you'll see their kind of Chili's Everywhere post, which is kind of that iconic image of, you know, holding the bottle. And you can kind of see there are a few other ones as well, but generally the call to action is like, you know, you share a post holding your bottle and you include that hashtag. So we're going to be, encouraging people to basically be sharing their refills with that hashtag. And it's kind of what is often referred to as user-generated content. You know, so we're encouraging people that are out there using the app, going to refill stations, to share their own content instead of us just putting out fancy photos of people refilling. Yeah, and this just kind of goes a little bit into some of the best practices on channels. So Twitter usually no more than 2 hashtags as a rule of thumb, whereas Instagram is totally different. Normally, it's best to use as many as 25. We generally have about 15 to 20 on there, but we're trying to sort of be a bit better with that. So that is a really, just I guess a kind of difference. And obviously with Twitter, you've got your kind of you've got your character count, so you can't, if you were to put 25 hashtags, you probably wouldn't be able to say much. But yeah, 2 hashtags tend to also get higher engagement. But again, just saying, what, as Sarah said, test stuff out. These are rules of thumbs. You're totally welcome to break them. But yeah, don't know if anyone wants to input on hashtags in terms of what you found useful for schemes and things. But for our channels, I know we've definitely found it useful as a way for people discovering things about refill when we use these kind of hashtags, that because you're kind of joining a bigger conversation than just your own kind of brand.
I would suggest checking out what other plastic-free initiatives are going on in your area. So, for example, in Manchester, I'll always make sure I tag Plastic-Free GM because they're doing some big stuff and have a greater audience as well. So tapping into stuff that's already going on is a very way of spreading your message to people who are interested.
Yeah, that's totally true. I think especially for local kind of specific hashtags, isn't it? Like when you've got, like you said, the kind of other local campaigning companies that might even have kind of their own branded hashtags, but it's very specific to an area that you're in. So kind of getting that community focus. Yeah, and I think that's probably extra important for schemes, as because you really want to be involved in those local conversations as well as the kind of wider plastics conversation.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great. All right. So native content, I'm very aware that when you're going through this guide, some of the stuff might be like, what is this? What is this native content? What are these hashtags? And that's totally fine. Hopefully with the guide, it's explained and broken down these some of these terms. But native content, this is just simply about what each platform is kind of being optimized for. I guess with something like Instagram, it's really easy because we know that it's totally focused on really striking images and more so videos. In a kind of, as it says here, in a kind of square format, of what we've been doing more recently, as well as doing vertical posts. So you can see here in your kind of feed, these are all square, but when you click on these individual posts, they're actually vertical, so they just take up a little bit of extra screen space. So just it's kind of more, there's that screen space there, and it's kind of you can kind of fit a bit more, and that can be sometimes a bit more impactful when you take up that bit of extra space. But again, these are very kind of detailed things that probably you don't need to worry too much about. But as we've already sort of mentioned as well, Twitter works really well with that kind of journalistic, short kind of headline type post that is a bit more shareable, perhaps. But you'll also find, I think, especially at a local level, you can get some really great engagement through Twitter and have some really great kind of back and forth with people. So there is obviously that kind of character limit of 280 characters. And what we've highlighted here is that I've also put in my notes is that don't feel like you have to use all of those characters. I think it used to be 140 characters, and we generally find that those posts tend to perform better. But this might be totally different for your audience. So just test what works. and I guess Facebook is, can be a bit longer with posts. I was also going to mention, with Instagram, more and more people are also doing much longer captions, almost like mini blog posts as well. So you do see some of that on Facebook. A lot of video at the moment, I think, on Facebook, and there's obviously the kind of stories aspect, which is the kind of vertical image that appears when you click on a person's profile picture. They'll kind of have a rainbow circle around it, and that just is more like live video and stills and graphics that kind of disappear after 24 hours. And because Facebook basically own Instagram now, when you post a story to Instagram, you can also have it cross-post to Facebook. I think in terms of native stuff for Facebook, as well as videos, photos, that really applies now to all the platforms. It's got that whole kind of other suite of tools. So, we really do encourage people to, if you're having a launch event, create an event on Facebook. It doesn't need to include much, but you can put your location, you can put the time, you can put a little blurb, and what we can actually do then is share that Facebook event through our events section on the Refill Facebook page. So, and they've obviously got a whole other range of things like groups and forums that you can run. You can embed sign-up forms if you're kind of, if you're working for a environmental organization that is, that you're running kind of as a day-to-day thing, but you've also brought in Refill into that. You can kind of bring in sign-up forms on Facebook, which can be handy if that's something that's going to benefit you guys. So that's kind of really what I was saying in terms of creating events, and we can kind of, like you sort of see here, there are certain events that we can just add to our page, which can help a bit get the word out. I've just put there in that second point that Facebook does have a scheduler. So if Facebook is the only platform that you're using, and you sort of want to avoid having another tool like Buffer, Facebook is good because you can schedule posts natively, so as in within Facebook. I think I've linked to that, how you can do that if you just click on this text here. I'm not sure if anyone else has used Facebook Scheduler. I have used it in the past, but now that we've kind of got everything on Buffer, we pretty much stick to that. But if anyone else has had experience with that, feel free to.
Yep, I use it when I run out of buffer space. It's a very handy thing for keeping things free.
Yeah, great. So I think, like we were saying with the Buffer on the free account, I think you're limited to post so many things a month, isn't it?
Yes. I can't remember how many it is.
It might be like 10 or 15 posts a month.
Yeah, I think it's about 15, or you can schedule 15 in one batch.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So if you are using Buffer, then like Sarah said, Facebook Scheduler can be a kind of take some of the burden off the free account for Buffer. Cool. All right. So these pages are basically just going down into each platform. We've got the kind of feed images and using strong images for that. We've got a bank of images that we also share with you. I've and you're welcome to use those. If there's any kind of credit that's needed, which normally it's just Refill, so you don't actually need to you don't have to credit us at all. If there is a credit though, there'll be a mention on the file or in a kind of README doc in that photo folder. I have noticed like sometimes people will use like a retweet app to like repost our images. So you'll get like a little box that will come up in the corner just with a retweet symbol. That's like totally fine. But I'd really encourage you to like also just even screenshot this kind of when you have a post open like this, and then crop the image off and then just repost it as a new one if you want. Just if you don't want to have that retweet symbol thing in your image. But equally, if you don't really care about that, that's totally fine. Just and if that works for you, please don't stop just because I have certain like preferences. So I think I've actually said that in there potentially. So I also just put a few ideas in terms of what you can do. Some of the strong images that we've found is like getting that the classic kind of sticker going in the window. I think with technology these days, in terms of like phones, it's most people have actually a pretty good camera on their phone. Like this is just taken on a normal kind of iPhone, which is it's nothing totally fancy. But I think a really kind of powerful image that sort of says refill, and it's also a good way to kind of encourage to say, hey, here's XYZ Cafe signed up, tag in your favorite local that isn't a refill station yet, so it can kind of work in a good sort of call to action context. But yeah, we've found that kind of formatted image works really well. Yeah, so again, here are just some tips in terms of using Twitter and some things you can do. So you'll notice on the Refill Twitter page, we've kind of pinned a tweet to the top of our profile, which actually originally came from a scheme that did that, and we thought it was like a really great idea, and we thought we should do it on the main channel. So that can kind of be a good thing to sort of, if you can't fit everything in your bio, you can kind of put hey, like, welcome to our profile. This is Refill Cymru, and here is like some more information about what we do, and maybe you can include a few extra hashtags in there. You can see the one. I think I've linked to it here. But yeah, this is kind of the one that we've included. So it just lets us have a little bit more messaging in there without clogging up the bio. And this is just like another tip in terms of, it's great to be able to sort of follow local businesses that have signed up in your area, and they can just be kind of good to engage with, and they're probably will be quite good because they'll probably, they could have a bit of a following already, so you can kind of connect into that, and sort of help grow, if you're using Twitter, you can help grow your Twitter account that way by sort of teaming up with those other accounts. All right, so this is kind of the final leg, I think. We've kind of got some stuff on video, and then a few other things like tips and engagement and stuff like that. I guess we've kind of put the video thing in there just because, that's becoming more and more of the platform that, not the platform, but more and more of the kind of medium that people are using. And I think the stat we have in there is, what is it? Sort of 4 times as many consumers would prefer to watch a video. I think there was also something there about people's kind of gaze is 5 times longer with video. So, people do engage more with video. The good thing about video now is that, you don't have to kind of own all this expensive equipment. You can just get your phone and start recording. So these are some little kind of, I guess, just tips around sort of taking advantage of video. You can even, using apps like iMovie, these ones that I mentioned at the bottom. Over is another sort of editor, Video Shop. All of these are really helpful to like let you sort of shoot video on your phone, but also be able to kind of edit something together. Excuse me. So I don't want to go too much into this just because of time. Some points around audio. I think you can sometimes be outside and it can be really windy. The best thing to do is just find somewhere that's got good light. So there's not too much shade on someone's face with the kind of blown out sky in the background, but you know, you might be sort of under a ledge, like that's just a bit protected, or beneath some trees, or, you know, if it's outside. You know, if it is really, really windy and people aren't going to hear what you're saying, just, you know, try, you could just try and sort of do it, find somewhere inside, or get someone to kind of hold up a coat next to your camera or something like that. I think with a lot of our videos, you can probably zoom out and kind of see someone doing something ridiculous like that to try and make the quality of the audio better or something. There is also a notion there about audio actually, you know, as well as it being kind of important, if it's kind of in your feed. So if you're just posting it instead of, like, for example, like a live stream or a longer video that's like, you know, showing your launch. If it's something that's kind of quick and shareable, it sometimes can be good to sort of overlay some text. And, you know, if you're doing sort of Instagram stories, it has that kind of functionality built in, so you can kind of film the video and then kind of type some text over the media, or, you know, the photo or the video. But yeah, I think with video there is also the other side to it, where people aren't actually turning audio on. So, you know, and I think for accessibility there is a thing of, you know, if you can subtitle it easily, it's good to kind of do that, or just highlight kind of key things that are being said in the video. I've kind of linked to some examples there as well. Yeah, I also think it's just important, again, to echo what sort of Hannah and Sarah mentioned around, you sort of don't worry too much about it. Like, this stuff is great if you can kind of take this on board. But, you know, we're equally happy just to kind of see you saying hello in this kind of, you know, format, whether that's kind of doing live stuff through Instagram stories, or you know, or something in your feed. I think we're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to skip past this here, because we've sort of touched on some of that, and just jump straight to this page here. So it's page 31, if you're following along. We've touched on some of these, but tips for keeping active: schedule a week's worth of posts. You know, it doesn't take too long. So if you're only doing 3 posts a week, and, you know, you're struggling to kind of, or you feel like it's time consuming, because you're sort of doing it as you go. If you have, you know, 10, 15 minutes during the week where you just sit down and, you know, even copy and paste some of the pre-written ones that are available in those kind of starter packs, and some of the, like this guide, for example. You know, or you could have a templated tweet that, you know, when a new station signs up, you've got a kind of template that you slightly adjust for each station. Things like that. You know, then you can just sit down, schedule them out. Could be for regular kind of times. And also, it's okay to totally, you know, if you've got multiple accounts, to post the same thing across those, and Buffer lets you do that. Other tips for keeping active: you know, retweeting other accounts. It's good to kind of include a comment on them, as opposed to just continuously retweeting. Sometimes people, you know, if they visit an account and there's just sort of retweets or reposts or shares, it can just sort of turn people off a little bit. So if you're going to retweet something, you know, it's totally obviously fine just to do that every now and then. But I think it's always good to kind of add a little comment, just to say, it might even be like sharing someone's kind of success. You know, a scheme signed up in a neighbouring town, so you might just say, yeah, you know, it's great to have, great to see another station signing up in Refill, Whitstable. And obviously, referring back to this guide, you know, if you ever get lost, you can just jump into this or this call, which hopefully will have some useful information, and it won't just be too much of sort of us rambling on, or me rambling on. This is just another kind of tip here, which is about sort of jabs and right hooks. Another kind of slang that I apologize for using, but we'll kind of break it down here. Essentially, this is just about providing, you know, interesting content that people will, you know, that your audience could find interesting, like a stat or a fact, or maybe an interesting article, and balancing that with fewer call to actions. If you're always asking people to take some sort of action, like come to an event or do this, do that, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's just nice to balance it out. So you've got, kind of more content that's interesting, that's kind of adding that value, and it makes those sort of what they call here like right hooks more effective. And I think, if people are more engaged because they're sort of seeing that interesting content, then when you share something like that, they're probably more likely to actually take an action. This is just about, please let us know if you've got some big successes, or if you've had a really great social media month and some big engagements on posts. We really would love to know, to hear about that. And obviously with the Refill Droplet sort of newsletter that we're starting to kind of bring in highlights of from the community. So we'd love to be able to hear about that and share it with everyone else, because I think it's a really good thing to do in a network like this, because everyone kind of gives other people inspiration and ideas of what they can do. And I also speak, I think, from Refill HQ perspective. We're always enjoying what the scheme, what you guys are putting out there, and sometimes it gives us ideas, and just like I'd hope some of our posts will give you guys ideas. Cool. So these are the list of resources that we've kind of, some of which have been mentioned throughout this guide. Buffer is obviously your social media scheduler that you can use for free. Unsplash is a really great resource for photos. You can use these without needing to sort of pay for royalties or put some long credit in. They do give you a little copy and paste after you download a photo that lets you acknowledge the photographer. And basically, if we're able to, like if it's an Instagram post, we tend to include that in there just to thank them. But sometimes there's not sort of a spot where you can put that credit. So, but yeah, you'll see on their website, essentially, you can just use the images completely for free. And they're all really great quality. You can search for things like, plastics or, whatever it might be. You might want to look for a cafe image to put out there to help, put calls out for new refill stations. So Canva lets you design social media posts, like kind of graphics and images. It's got a whole bunch of templates that you can use. And basically, if you're not sort of naturally a designer or don't have sort of certain design tools, Canva is a great tool just to use, and it gives you a whole bunch of free resources that you can edit and make your own. Sarah, I know you use that quite a bit. I'm pretty sure there's a good kind of free version of that.
Yeah, the free version is fantastic. I recommend it to everybody. You can pretty much do a lot of stuff. You just need to keep an eye on the corner of each image or graphic, because some of them are paid for, but it does alert you before you actually download it, so you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Great. All right. And so Emojipedia is the one that I showed you just before here. Bitly, that is a link shortener. I wouldn't worry about too much, but if you've got a link that you're sharing to, if you've written a blog, for example, so I'm aware that some refill schemes are run by other environmental companies or organizations. So if you're directing people to your website, Bitly can be a great tool you essentially give it a long URL link, like for example this here, and you can customize it to be, so I could say bit.ly/social media guide. So it's a bit more like presentable, and it's kind of a nicer way to share links. So it's not a big kind of long URL. And you can also track, how many people are clicking on that. Grammarly is a tool just if you need some help, like I know I sometimes do with grammar. So if you write a post on Facebook or something, it'll pick up on and make any suggestions to improve that. And then I've also just put in here the help centers for these main platforms. They are really, really useful. And, you know, I think you can really trust them because, you know, if Instagram is saying this is the sort of way to do things, there's a good chance it's going to be the way to do things. You know, if you do get stuck on certain things, or if you are kind of keen to learn more about these tools, they can be really helpful. And, you know, they've got whole teams behind these. So sometimes I have schemes that will come and ask kind of very specific questions, and instead of me trying to like type out a big thing explaining it, I'll often just check and see if there's a really clear and well written sort of support article in one of these help centers, which there often is, which can normally just be better for everyone. So that is it. I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking, but just before we finish, I guess I wanted to sort of open it up to any final points from the RCs, and yeah, or any other kind of questions from people that are tuning in with us now.
Hey, I think
Hello.
from my point of view, I think just try and have as much fun as you can with it. Don't look at it as a chore or a job. Just really enjoy what you can do with it. I think it's the best thing to do. It's social media. It's about being social. It's about chatting with other schemes, chatting with people in your community, and just getting to know people, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also kind of using your social media platform to, I don't know, show off all of your achievements and share best practice. I'm sure there's hundreds of schemes now. They're all in the same boat, starting off. And I think everybody needs some inspiration sometimes. So just don't feel afraid to kind of blow your own trumpet and say, look what we've done, guys. This is really great. This might work for your community as well.
Yeah, totally. That's a great point because, yeah, I think it is really helpful for other schemes as well, to kind of, yeah, I think it's encouraging, isn't it? And yeah, I think there is that thing of just recognizing that it is a community. You know, there are a lot of different schemes across the country, and it's really good to, remind other people that we're each of us are kind of here and doing something, and kind of use the value of that kind of network. Yeah, I don't know, James, do you have anything that you wanted to add? Or?
I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure what Hannah said actually, because she's muted for me for some reason. But I think everyone else can hear her. But it might be echoing some of what she said, but and also what Sarah said. But like, yeah, keeping it fun, and don't be afraid to include other schemes in your conversations that you're having on social media, and engaging with them, and engage with businesses as well. Places that your stations, your refill stations, use it as an opportunity to celebrate them, as well as the kind of the work that you're doing and the other schemes are doing, and just try to really make sure everybody kind of feels that they're part of it and part of the campaign. Because I think that's what Refill as a wider campaign does really well, as our kind of core messages and tone and so on is all about being fun and inclusive, and creative as well is quite a big part of it. So yeah, finding ways to do all of that, and not being afraid to just try something that might be a bit different, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but just give it a go.
Yeah, cool. I think that's probably a really great sort of note to end on. So take all the stuff and just sort of put it away into your subconscious, and or if there's one thing I think that you can take away from this call or from the guide, I think for me that would be totally worth the work put in to kind of put that together. So yeah, just yeah, enjoy it, have fun, and please, remember we're also here to help. So feel free to sort of reach out to Refill through the social media channels that we have, or to your regional coordinator, because we're all very happy to help. So yeah, that is it. We will stop this broadcast now, and we will consider doing another one again without some technical issues at the beginning. We're always keen to hear your feedback. What's kind of useful, and I know that a lot of the regional coordinators kind of plugged into that. But yeah, I'm sort of sitting behind the social channels as well. You're more than welcome to reach out over those. So goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.